Every time I hear all of that, it reminds me how many years are involved in all of that. So I'm just going to park that one for now and come back to it later. Good morning, sisters and brothers. You know, looking out at you, I can only think about what an amazing gathering of HEU activists are here today and this week from every part of the province and every sector of our union. So I want to begin by thanking every single one of you for the leadership you bring to your locals, the incredible work you do for your co-workers, and for all British Columbians who rely on your skills, your dedication, most of all, your commitment to delivering quality care in British Columbia. You know, let's face it, most of the time we're all so busy that we rarely have an opportunity to reflect on just how much we do for so many, let alone where we were at as a union, where we've come from, and exactly where we're going in the future. So let me just say, wow, it's been a hell of a year, and we might even make that a hell of a decade. And while there are a lot of positives in that time, amazingly so, given how much has been coming at us, there's no getting around it. We've had more than our fair share of challenges. But you know, we've been here before. You can't look back over the last 60 years without seeing that struggle is part of our history and the history of all labor unions. In fact, it's the essential ingredient to every victory we've ever achieved. Our job actions in 1992 led to hundreds of millions of dollars in pay equity adjustments. Our struggle to organize nursing homes in the 70s and 80s secured standard wages and improved conditions throughout the long-term care sector. And our victory in 2007 that enshrined collective bargaining as a charter-protected right for the first time in Canadian history. So yes, we've had our struggles. Struggle is part of what got us here. It's been essential to our victories. And I believe we are finally on the cusp of real change in British Columbia. BC Liberals, under Gordon Campbell and Christy Clark, have had a very clear agenda for healthcare and social services. And there's no question about it. We've been in their way. And we've been in the way of their contracting out and privatization plans. But here's the kickers. Here's the kicker. 12 years later, we're still here. And the BC Liberals, well, they're on their way out. And now I want to talk to you about something that's clearly on everyone's mind. It's been mentioned several times already, BCNU's raid on our union. A raid that has been condemned by the entire labor movement. A raid that is unconscionable by anyone's standards. A raid that was built on debasing the value and the integrity of the vast majority of workers who make up the healthcare team. But hear this and hear it loud and clear. Our union stood strong against Gordon Campbell, and we are not going to allow BCNU and their attack on our union to finish that job. It's not going to happen. And I'm sure there are many of you here today who question why we fought so hard, especially given that the outcome wasn't one that we'd all hoped to achieve. And I think that's a reasonable question. We defended our LPN members the same as we will defend every member in every classification of this union. And I have no doubt about HEU's ability to protect and advance LPN professional practice. Our record speaks to that, our commitment speaks to that, our experience in defending LPNs against BCNU's desire to limit their practice speaks to that. But despite our best efforts and all your best efforts at the local level, the majority of LPNs made a decision. And they've made their choice. Some of us might say for now. But I believe HEU triumphed in so many ways. Our integrity consistently shone through our anti-raid campaign. We chose the high ground. We spoke the truth. We garnered the support and the solidarity of the entire labor movement. And we saw BCNU banished from the House of Labor. And you know, one of the sadder things for so many of our LPNs, our sisters and brothers who did not want to leave HEU, is this: they are now outside the labor movement. RNs and now many LPNs are without the backing of the trade union movement. And that, my friends, is its own tragedy. We cannot thank our sisters and brothers in the labor movement enough for the amazing support HEU received throughout BCNU's 3-year raid on our union. Our national union, CUPE, was with us every step of the way, from their ongoing moral support to their financial backing to bolstering our ranks with LPN activists who flew in from other parts of the country to work side by side with our LPN members. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Charles, from the bottom of our hearts. And at the same time, I want to acknowledge the extraordinary support that came from the officers of the BC Federation of Labor. Their unwavering solidarity and support kept us going many days. Many of you may not realize the extent to which Jim Sinclair and Irene Lansinger defended our union. Their support was rock solid. Jim personally spent many hours on the phone and on the doorstep, going well above and beyond the call of duty to be with us on the ground. It's that kind of leadership, when the going gets tough, that motivated your provincial executive to unanimously endorse Jim Sinclair and Irene Lansinger's re-election at the upcoming BC Federation of Labor Convention. So yes, we are indeed thankful for all of the support we've received from so many over the past 3 years. It gives me pause to reflect on the importance of the labor movement and what it means to be a union member. In BC, there are literally hundreds of thousands of workers who don't have a union to defend their rights. And sisters and brothers, when all is said and done, one of the saddest outcomes of BCNU's attack on our union is this: not one single unorganized worker in this province is a member of a trade union as a result of their actions. At HEU, we continue to focus our organizing efforts on workers who are without union representation. And I'm proud to say that unorganized workers, primarily in residential care, but not exclusively, continue to turn to HEU. Why HEU? Because they want a union that will stand up to those private employers who use every trick in the book to try and deunionize the sector. They want a union that will fight contracting out, contract flipping, and unprecedented levels of employer intimidation, a union that fights for better seniors' care in every arena that we can. And if you go beyond the last 2 years and look back over the last decade, HEU has brought more unorganized workers into the labor movement than any other union. That's a pretty impressive achievement, given all of the issues that we've had in the last decade, all of the crap that we've had to deal with from the BC Liberals. And of course, and we heard some of this yesterday, our organizing successes have come with their own challenges. We look a lot different than we did a decade ago when most HEU members worked in the public sector. Health facilities, community health, community social services. Today, thousands of our members are now working in the private sector. Many are employed by multinational and domestic corporations, and thousands more work in residential care facilities that are owned and operated by for-profit contractors. And that means we're bargaining year in and year out at more than 100 tables. It means we're dealing with numerous employers on workplace issues. It means our union has had to evolve to meet the changing needs of our members. At our last biennial convention in 2010, we changed our bargaining structure to better reflect this new reality. Each sector now holds its own separate bargaining conference where members can establish their own bargaining priorities. That was a major step forward, and it's working well. But we can't stop there, not when we're dealing with increasingly complex work environments, endless restructuring in both the public and the private sector, not when our staff must continue to familiarize themselves with dozens of different collective agreements, and not when so many of our locals are young, small, and often isolated. If we are to successfully meet the changing needs of our members and the changing environments that you work in, we must equip ourselves with new ways of doing things. And that's why your provincial executive presented a resolution to this convention that we dealt with yesterday that will allow us to review many of our internal structures over the next few months. We'll look at what's working, what we can do better, how we can be more effective, how we can build a stronger and more responsive union. And while we can implement some of those changes now, we'll be reporting back to convention in 2014. So let's look at where we are right now. In a word, it's bargaining, bargaining, and bargaining. We are currently bargaining in every part of this union, in facilities, in community health, in community social services, with our acute care contractors, and with many independent long-term care contractors. And I have to say, it's been incredible to see HEU members answer the call. In every sector where votes have been taken, they've given their bargaining committees the strike mandate they need to pressure employers and government. Most recently in facilities, the turnout and the solidarity in our locals was stronger than it's been in years. And what does solidarity sound like? I'll tell you what it sounds like. It sounds like 96%. Healthcare workers have simply had enough. Every day, you're working under incredibly stressful conditions to provide British Columbians with the care they need. You're dealing with ridiculously heavy workloads. You're working short. You're being pressured to come in sick, thanks to these so-called attendance promotion programs. And yes, Jim Kelly, I know you have a different name for them. And then at the bargaining table, you're being squeezed by a government that has steadfastly refused for the last 2 rounds of bargaining to put any new money into the people who deliver health care in this province. A government that refuses to recognize, let alone respect, the value of your work. So it's no surprise to me that the final straw came when government had the audacity to threaten your benefits. And we aren't back at the facilities table yet, but we're pressuring employers to set dates to come back to that table. In community health, our members are facing many of the same unreasonable demands from health employers that have surfaced at the facilities table. Our members in this sector also provided their bargaining representatives with a strong strike mandate, and job action is starting this week. On Wednesday, I think that would be tomorrow, we'll have an opportunity to stand with our community health partners to support that strike action. And yes, sisters and brothers, That's what solidarity looks like. On other fronts, our members in community social services are now in the middle of rotating strike action. This is a sector that has suffered from endless and pointless restructuring and millions of dollars in cutbacks. In community living services, for example, scores of group homes have been closed, and people with developmental disabilities have been forced to move against their will. And despite Christy Clark's efforts at damage control when she was forced to fire her minister and the head of Community Living BC a year ago, the crisis continues. You may remember that just a few months ago, it came to light that the very managers responsible for creating the mess in community living got performance bonuses. I mean, that's an unbelievable response. And it certainly wasn't lost on our members who have the responsibility on the ground to support some of the most vulnerable people in our province. And for many months now, HEU has been working in coalition with family groups, service agencies, other unions, community organizations to advocate for the funding needed to improve services in this sector. And we'll continue to do so for our members and for the people they support. And once again, that's what solidarity looks like. Let me turn now to another huge round of bargaining that's underway. And that's with the 5 major acute care contractors and hospital support services: Aramark, Sodexo, Acciona, Compass, and Marquee. It's too soon to tell how these folks are going to, or how these talks are going to unfold, but our members are ready. They've taken the same energy and determination they've shown throughout our living wage campaign into bargaining. In this sector, there are 13 different collective agreements at 80 different work sites in 4 different health authorities. And despite that fragmentation, that's occurred as a result of privatization and contracting out, we are presenting a united front for our members at the bargaining table. When the employer shows up to negotiate at one of these 13 collective agreements, we show up with multi-site bargaining committees representing members in all of their other collective agreements as well. And these bargaining teams are backed up by contract action teams. These are local activists who are charged with informing and mobilizing our members in this sector. And it's very empowering and it's very exciting. And that, sisters and brothers, is what solidarity feels like. In the independent long-term care sector, and I've already alluded to this, government and its business allies are bent on deunionizing the delivery of seniors' care and robbing workers of their wages, benefits, and pensions. You know the story. They close public beds, open private beds with public money. They contract out decent jobs. We organize, we bargain, they flip the contract. But here's the other story. Workers in this sector fight over and over again in face of intimidation and threats to their economic security for union representation. And with the support of HEU, these members organize, they sign cards, they talk to their co-workers, they take huge risks together to stand up to the anti-union employers. And that, sisters and brothers, is what solidarity looks like. So we've certainly got a lot on our plate. And I think it's important that we realize we're not alone. Our fight for decent jobs, fair wages, better working conditions is one that's happening right across the labor movement, not just here in British Columbia, but across Canada, North America, and the globe. Unfortunately, we're living in a time where the attack on working people and their unions is relentless. The right-wing appetite to drive down wages and weaken union power is growing. We've seen it in Wisconsin and many other American states. And now we're seeing that kind of thinking jump the border into Canada. You know, witness Brad Wall in Saskatchewan. I used to like to say I was from Saskatchewan. I'm second-guessing that lately. The Conservative Party in Ontario. and our own Premier here in BC. And then let's not forget the treatment of the airline workers, the postal workers, the federal public service, and the others who have had their collective agreement rights completely undermined by Stephen Harper's Conservatives. The good news, however, is this. Working people in their unions are fighting back, and they're doing it in solidarity with each other and with their communities. Yes, change is afoot in this province. Slowly but surely, people are coming together. Opposition to the BC Liberals' failed policies is growing, and I think come May we'll be dealing with a government that has a lot more respect for the work that you do. And I know that an NDP government cannot solve every problem created by Gordon Campbell and Christy Clark. It's quite frankly going to take a lot longer than 4 years to heal the damage they've done, which is why it's important for our members and allies to be patient and ensure that we create the space that's needed for a frank and open dialogue about the changes that need to be made. And I know the polls are looking good for the NDP. Sisters and brothers, we cannot take anything for granted over the next 7 months. You know, wasn't it great to hear from Adrian yesterday? And you know Adrian and his caucus and the NDP candidates who will be contesting the next election, and we've spoken about and to Judy Darcy, a new Westminster, one of many working to create a positive option for British Columbians next May. But I agree with Adrian's comments. It's not good enough for the NDP to win because British Columbians are sick and tired of Christy Clark and the BC Liberals. The NDP needs to win because British Columbians support their vision of doing politics differently in this province. And for HEU members, this means a province where employers and government treat our members with the respect they deserve, as well as full partners in improving services to the public. For the last 10 years, your employers have engaged in some of the most disrespectful behavior that I've seen in my almost 40 years of involvement in the labor movement. This decade of disrespect, the torn up agreements, the layoffs, the wage rollbacks, the contract flipping, the tone your employer sets when they walk into a labor management or a health and safety meeting, this decade of disrespect must come to an end. We have amazing power in our union at the grassroots, and our members are in the position to make a crucial difference in closely contested contests and elections across BC come May. Between now and then, we must all be prepared to talk to our members about the importance of engaging our families, our neighbors, and our fellow workers in this election. As I've said, a lot of damage has been done by the Clark-Campbell Liberals over the last decade, and our members, and you know this, you live it every day, have been at the center of the attack on public health care. So let's not waste this opportunity to change things for the better come May. Sisters and brothers, there's a lot to fight for in this province, and I know that many of you, the fight for seniors' care is close to your hearts. HEU members put so much of themselves into caring for their elderly residents emotionally and physically. It takes a dedicated person to meet the most personal, intimate care needs for a frail senior, and to do it with respect and compassion. But that's what our members are doing every single day. And it's often heartbreaking for our members. Our seniors have given so much to us, and all too often we cannot give them the time and attention they deserve when there are so few hands to carry the heavy loads. We've been fighting for better seniors' care for a very long time. So I know that many of our members felt validated when the BC Ombudsperson released the final installment of her investigation into seniors' care earlier this year. And I think our members should be proud of the fact that her investigation was sparked, at least in part, by the closure of Cowichan Lodge in Duncan, and by our campaign with the community to oppose that decision. The Ombudsperson's report is quite extensive, and here's what I think is important about her findings. I mean, there are many that are important, but she recommended minimum staffing levels in residential care, as well as specific measurable standards for bathing, toileting, dental care, and other aspects of personal care. She's called for measures to ensure that seniors in residential care are not adversely affected by large-scale staff replacement. I think you all know what she means by large-scale staff replacement. Contracting out, contract flipping, privatization, whatever the label, we know it for what it is. It's a disease, and it's a disease that has become an epidemic under the BC Liberals. It's a disease that undermines seniors' care by rupturing the critical relationships the elderly depend on for their quality of life. It's a disease that throws care facilities, their homes, into chaos and uncertainty. It's a disease that puts decent jobs at risk for women and men who've often dedicated decades to the care of the elderly. We've seen this scenario play out at dozens of care homes across the province over the last 10 years, and it continues. It's been a real struggle for our union. So I want to congratulate all the HEU members who've stood up to contracting out and contract flipping time and time again. They've galvanized their communities, and most importantly, they put the problem squarely in the public eye. It hasn't stopped contracting out, but these campaigns have made it a huge liability for Christy Clark. And you know, it's sadly ironic. Next week, we'll join with other Canadians to mark Remembrance Day. And at the same time, we're fighting plans to contract out the work of 90 members at George Derby, a veterans facility in Burnaby. And it's because these veterans and all of our long-term care residents that our union will continue to fight for quality care and for the implementation of the Ombudsperson's recommendations. So I've talked a lot about change this morning, but before I close, I want to say a few words about things that don't change, those things that are at the core of who we are as a union and what we stand for. We recognize the value of every member of the team, not just part of it. We champion equity and promote equality in our workplaces and in our communities. We are committed to building an economically and socially just society. We value democracy and solidarity within our union and across the labor movement. We forge relationships with our allies and community partners that are built on mutual respect. We believe in a more peaceful world, a healthier environment, and an end to poverty. These are qualities that don't change and that we can count on in every fight we take on. So I want to thank your provincial executive for their leadership and their commitment to all of you and all of the hard work that they've done over the last 2 years. Ken and Denisa, I work side by side with you every day in the provincial office, and I can't thank you enough for your unequivocal support, both to me personally and to the membership. Jackie De Aguayo, what can I say? The Assistant Secretary Business Manager, and you know, she's truly been my right hand through everything I've been dealing with and you've been dealing with and we've all been dealing with. And last but far from least, I thank all of HEU's hardworking, dedicated staff. You are the best, and you don't hear that nearly enough. And in closing, I want to say to all of you how proud and how privileged I am to represent you and your interests to government, to employers, to the rest of the trade union movement, and to the public. You are, without a doubt, the heart of healthcare. Thank you.